Welcome everyone to Expanding Your Consciousness through sharing stories and also discussion. And tonight's topic is about people who live on prana. Other terms are chi or life force. So tonight I'd like to share some videos with you about people who have this type of lifestyle, and that's what they call it. It is a lifestyle. But before we begin, I do want to actually remind people who are participating in this meetup to mute yourselves before we begin the videos. You don't have to do that right now because I do have some questions for you before we begin. And also, I want to put out there a disclaimer too, because the process that these people go through can take years. So even though in a few videos, people talk about doing it in 21 days and all that, often it's a longer process than that, because it depends on how expansive they are, of their consciousness is, because it really is about changing their vibrational state and their different energy bodies before they get to a level where they can actually, they're only nutrients from prana. We get our nutrients from prana, all of us, but also through the food that we eat. Another thing I want to say is, because some of these people have been criticized on things such as Wikipedia, and I learned this by watching a video by Dr. Sam Osmanagich, who found the pyramid in Bosnia, which is one of the largest pyramids in the world. And he said people think that Wikipedia is something that anyone can go into and change the information there. But what he said is, if you go up against people who do not want certain information out there, they will put things on Wikipedia to discredit you, and you can't go in there and change that information. So Jasmuheen, who I will be showing in some videos tonight, is one of those people. In the 1990s, Jasmuheen's from Australia, and then the early 1990s, she had reached a certain spiritual level where she could just live on prana. And so she wanted to share this with the world. And so the television program, the American television program, 60 Minutes, interviewed her. And so she did a very sincere interview with them, but they altered the information. So on Wikipedia, they discredit her, right? They say, oh, you know, she was faking it and all this sort of stuff, right? She was consuming food and all that, right? Another person, and I don't know if I'll be able to show the video tonight, but I will insert it, you know, or show it on our channel, is a nun in Germany in the 1920s, Therese Neumann, and she just lived on the little wafers you get during Mass for 35 years. She lived like that. And again, I had difficulties trying to find a really authentic video about her. And again, when you read stuff on Wikipedia about her, you can see, you know, people, you know, undermine the fact that she was living on prana. So keep that in mind as we go through this. And so how did I learn about this? Well, I read the book by Michael Talbot called The Holographic Universe. And in the book, he had a chapter about Therese Neumann. And he talked about her being a somatist, a person who would show the wounds of Christ on their hands and feet. They would materialize. Now, I've read different stories that periodically it would show up on their body, but in another reading that I found, or another resource, they said that she actually, it would show up weekly, right? So on her hands, on their feet. I have seen some videos where they show, you know, blood coming from her eyes. I do not know if they are authentic. So I I didn't include those. But this is what he wrote about. He said, Therese Newman, in addition to her stigmata, Newman was also displayed an idia, that's a person who lives without food, the supernatural ability to live without food. Her idia began in 1923 when she transferred the throat disease of a young priest to her own body and subsisted solely on liquids for several years. Then in 1927, she gave up both food and water entirely. When the local bishop in Regensburg first learned of Newman's fast, he sent a commission into her home to investigate. From July 14th to July 29th, 1927, and under the supervision of a medical doctor named Seidel, 4 nursing sisters scrutinized her every move. They watched her day and night, and the water she used for washing and rinsing her mouth was carefully measured and weighed. The sisters discovered several unusual things about Newman. She never went to the bathroom, even though after a period of 6 weeks, she only had 1 bowel movement, and the excrement examined by a Dr. Reisman contained only a small amount of mucus and bile, but no traces of food. She also showed no signs of dehydration, even though the average person expels about 400 grams or 14 ounces of water daily in the air he or she exhales, and like amount through the pores. And her weight remained constant, although she lost nearly 9 pounds in blood during the weekly opening of her stigmata. Her weight returned to normal within a day or 2 later. So before we begin though, I just want to ask how people feel about the subject matter. Any comments? Oh, Kenny?
I feel curious because I've heard of this. I met a guy that they claimed had that ability, but it's a very difficult paradigm for me. So, but I'm also in a situation where in the next 6 months I'd like to lose 25 pounds. So let's see if we can give this a try.
Yeah. Okay.
I think
Well,
it's
that's again, it's not about fasting or dieting, right? It's not.
no.
That's not what they're doing, right? It's really about changing their vibrational state, changing their consciousness, right? So it just comes naturally. And often with people, it can take decades. And when I show a video about the Breatharian Festival in Italy, one woman said, it took her 3 decades, right? And it just came naturally. She wasn't, set out to do that, though it was something she, sometimes I guess put out there in the universe, but, she finally, got to that point. So, Kelly?
No worries. I think it's amazing because I've heard that it can cure cancer and all kinds of diseases because there's really nothing but clarity in your mind and body. So I think it's great.
Yeah. And Shima?
I just want to say that I'm also curious to see if in this process they also get any that kind of insight or awareness, because for us, like in Halqa mysticism or Irfan, that's like the end goal for us. So whatever we do or any spiritual process that we go through, the end thing would be, okay, so what do you get from this process? So like, how did it change you, or like your mindset, or like what sorts of insights did you get? What sorts of inspirations or awareness you get? So that's what I'm really curious about to see.
Yeah, there will be some people talking about that, right? Like they use it for channeling. There was a woman that actually talked about in the longer version of a video. So where I've taken videos and spliced them down, I will post links to the longer videos if you want more details about,
Okay.
Nice.
what happened to them in that. I also, along with Jasmuheen and the people at this breatharian festival, and by the way, Jasmuheen and Olga Podorovskaya in the Ukraine, they both would attend this festival, but I didn't include their talks there. I wanted other interviews by them, but they get into that, how it changed them over time too. I also have just a very short, like a 2-minute video with Michael Werner Werner from Switzerland. And he wrote the book, Life from Light. And he's a scientist, right? And even at this festival, there are scientists that speak at it because they live on light. Are we ready for the first one? Okay.
Ready.
I want to show this first one, which is a young couple. First, Jasmuheen speaks, and then it's a young couple that live on light.
I never say I never eat. I just say I have freedom of choice because I do. And that's a great gift. So that's a huge freedom. It's been nearly 20 years for me now.
I am not feeling hungry from 2008. That something happened in my body, but the sensation, the feeling of all of that is gone. And that was one of the first, like, wow, I don't feel that. Because before, when I used to eat a lot.
It's fascinating because I don't feel like I'm depending on anything. In those moments, if I choose to drink something or eat something, it's not ever because I feel hungry. I don't remember what that sensation feels like.
People, when they increase their chi flow, their prana level, they don't get sick anymore like people generally do. They still may get sick, but nowhere like the normal population. So we don't need pharmaceutical industries, we don't need medical industries to the degree we have.
I have lived 2 pregnancies now, also in this state, and I think it's also interesting to note that in these experiences, I also don't feel hunger. With my son Inti, I didn't feel at all the desire even to drink much or eat. Almost, I think maybe 4 times in my pregnancy with him, I ate something. And this was like in social settings. No, I'm not a craving mama. I get asked the question all the time, what are your cravings? What do you want to have, you know?
Are you vegetarian?
No. Sometimes.
Sometimes. Nice.
That's what is for me the most wonderful thing that make me satisfied, make me nourished constantly. And that satisfies such a level, all my mind, my emotions, my being, and that joy makes me free of needing other things to be happy.
And everyone's already living on prana, or we couldn't have life. Prana is that energy force that's breathing us and allowing molecules to come around this essence energy so we can have life in this realm. It's the same essence in all. So if my essence is your essence and my essence has this gift just by aligning more to it, to live purely on prana, then anyone can.
The pranic consciousness is also about this higher intelligence that exists within all of us, and it gives us the possibility to know that we don't have to search outside for someone else to give us the answer or to guide us, that we have all of the answers within us.
She's on my hand.
Yeah, look at how beautiful.
Just sit down in silence and ask to experience who you really are. Ask to experience all the gifts your essence has for you, and you'll find all sorts of dimensions and realities opening up to you that will take away every hunger you may have ever had. And then a human system is truly free.
Okay.
Any comments on this one, by the way, before we
That was
continue?
excellent. I think it was fascinating because she was pregnant.
I know. That's why I wanted to
Yeah.
show that first, right?
I mean, that was nice to hear people talking about it. It certainly wouldn't, you know, trying to be objective, it wouldn't, doesn't add, like it didn't offer anything that makes something conclusive about it. I mean, I guess you would have to really research it and try to experience some of it yourself. But that, you know, it's nice there's people out there that are saying they're living on prana.
Yeah, and Jasmuheen and others go out into the world and educate people on this, and they teach them how to do it, too, right? And she's done that in the ghettos of Brazil. She's gone into India, China, and other countries like that. Okay, Kenny?
So I'm trying to be Mr. Scientific here. New science. So the observation there is that there's people who live without eating and drinking.
Yeah.
And that part seems credible based on what we just saw. But they didn't offer an explanation. I mean, there was a sort of a poetic comment by that one woman, the very last one. So far we've seen the beauty of it, or this is very cool. And I'm just dying to find out how they explain it,
Yeah.
and how the training goes and all that kind of stuff.
Tell you, the next video is, I actually extended it. I'm glad that I did, because I was going to make it a little shorter, because one thing Jasmuheen gets into, and this is another Jasmuheen one, is the 21-day program. Now, some people like Michael Werner did it successfully, but others who have tried it, in fact, there was a woman that did it, but she did not do it properly. She didn't have like someone to check in on her and that sort of stuff. And she left her body permanently, right? She passed on. So I think it is important, you know, Jasmuheen actually had to change it after that, because she said, you know, people are at different stages of consciousness. And in this next interview, she talks about that. You know, she says, again, we all have had different lives. So through those past lives too, we might have been preparing for that in this life. So, you know, I thought, keep that in mind. This isn't something that we all may be interested in doing anyway, right? You know, we didn't come here for that purpose. But I think it is important to be aware that there are people living this lifestyle. Lion.
Sorry about that, Diane. I come in a little late. I didn't understand. It means that people don't eat anything, any food, any drink for how long? And I just thought it's like a vegetarian. They eat other things except the meat. Am I wrong or right?
Yeah. These are people that, have you ever heard of people talking about free energy, Lion? You know, like Tesla tapped into free energy, that sort of stuff. It's the energy that is source, that surrounds us. It's the chi, it's the prana, it's the light.
I know
right?
they stopped eating for how long?
It's a process. So there are different levels. And when I get into the video about the festival, they get into those levels. But some people may only eat maybe one meal or 1 or 2 meals a week. Others don't consume food or drink at all.
For how long?
All their life.
I cannot believe that one.
I know. Well, isn't it interesting, like, Because, and one reason we don't believe it is we think, well, survival is all food and shelter. Food
I
and
know,
shelter, food
without
and shelter.
food, without drink for life, how they can survive?
Yeah, and that's why in the video she talks about that, right? That people do, you know, can live on the energy around us, right, for life, but say process, and it again, this may not be something that we decide to do in this life, right? So we're just
The
putting out there.
problem for
But
me-
Lion, as we go through it, you're gonna hear
Okay.
different people talking about this.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Shall we continue? And this is one about Jasmuheen. I just took the where she, and it's, I'd say maybe about 12 minutes. And she's talking about the 21-day program. And again, she changed that because she realized there was too many problems with that.
The interview you are about to watch was done in 2006 with Peter Strawbringer for his movie In the Beginning There Was Light. The following interview is only for those sincerely interested in our work in the world, particularly our research with the reality of being nourished in another way.
You just say, my name is Jasmine, your age if you want, what's your profession, and when you started to live on light and stopped eating.
Okay. Hi, my name is Jasmuheen. I'm from Australia. Some people call me a scientist of energy fields, and it's been now 13 years since I've been allowing the energy of prana to bring me all my vitamins and minerals and nourishment. And it was a journey I began, I guess, in 1993, but had probably 20 years preparation for before that.
Your biography and spiritual development, when did you first hear that there are people who don't need to eat?
People often ask me, you know, is there much training involved in this? What is my background with this? And I always say to them, the simplest answer is I've had lifetimes of training. Not that I was ever aware that I would come into a place where I would stop eating physical food and that the divine love flow inside of me would become so strong that it could nourish me. That was never a conscious thought. But I read about people doing this in a book called Autobiography of a Yogi many, many years ago. And I loved it. It was the first book that I'd ever read where you could feel energy of love coming from the pages, which was what interested me most about the book. When I read about Giri Bala, who was someone in the Himalayas who was choosing to allow prana to nourish her, it wasn't something that I thought, oh good, I want to do that. That I didn't even think about it. I just thought, oh yeah, that's interesting. But in 1993, I was guided to do a very particular spiritual initiation that in Germany is covered in detail in the book Lichtnerung. And again, it wasn't something that I did because I wanted to stop eating physical food. It was an initiation that I understood that would allow me to experience more deeply the divinity that gives me life. As many people now know in the spiritual realms and in these paths, when we meditate and use probably ancient breathing tools of pranayama, kriya yoga, things like this, we start to experience the force behind the breath and this incredible energy that just loves us and loves us enough to give everybody life. You know, without that force, we wouldn't be alive. So my interest in life was always just to experience all the gifts that this force had. I remember as a very small child going to the Christian church and the priest saying that Jesus said things like, everything I have done you can do and more. And I and my Father are one, we are made in the same image. And I always took that literally. Maybe it wasn't meant to be taken literally, but I just thought, that's great, I like that. I'd like to just have these sort of gifts and abilities that the Christ had, not because I wanted to be special or better or anything. I just liked the things that he could do and that he shared of. And when he said, all you have to do is ask and you'll receive, I started asking from a very young age. It just all made sense to me. And I just asked to really experience the Christ inside of myself, to really experience the teachings of the Christ on the highest level, to really know who I am on all levels. At the same time, I was brought up in a family where every Sunday we would have, classic European breakfast, and we'd sit around as a family and we'd talk about political things, spiritual things, anything. And there was always a lot of debate and discussion. And I had older brothers and sisters who would always, they'd stimulate me to really express myself and have very good, clear arguments to any points that I made. So it forced me to do a lot of research into things as well. And so by the time I was probably about 16, I came in contact with some of the gurus or yogis from the East, and they taught me ancient techniques from the Vedas of meditation. And the very first day that I learned these and I really sat and meditated, I experienced what I was looking for. I experienced my whole head exploding with so much light, but with the light came so much love, just wave after wave after wave of love flowing through my whole body. And I knew in an instant that that's what I was. I was a being of the purest, most sublime, most beautiful love, and not my personality and not my ego or anything like that. And I became addicted to that love. And so I spent 20-something years just meditating every day and practicing these ancient techniques. And what I understand now, changing my resonance in the field, changing what was emanating out of me, because every human system is like a transmission station, a radio, and they send signals out into the field of all sorts of things, signals that reflect our emotional state, our belief systems, how we treat ourselves, signals that can be very toxic, from toxic food or toxic thinking or toxic feeling, or signals can be very harmonious, and then the universe responds to that and reflects it all back to us. So for me, that path of meditation and that type of lifestyle, of a very light diet, which was my natural inclination through years of meditation, the things that I was living the way I was living, where service was a great part of this as well, giving to others, I mean, that puts you in a channel of kindness and compassion. And all of this, I understand now, was just changing my field of resonance, changing the signals out into the field. And, energy expands, attracts like frequencies and contracts back. So therefore, when I went through this initiation in 93, I was able, as a consequence, to attract enough cosmic particles to really be able to nourish my body in a completely different way to what I had been up to that point. But it's taken many years to try and understand the science of it. All I knew was I did a beautiful spiritual initiation, and at the end of it, I no longer had any hunger, really, especially physical hunger. Yeah.
How did you find it?
Well, my life changed a lot in the early 90s. I had my inner guidance to unhook from working in the business field, and after many, many years as a solo meditator and someone just really learning to listen to my own inner guidance, I actually became drawn to be part of a spiritual community in Australia, or connect more, I guess, with weekly meetings with like-minded people who were very focused on what we call ascension, or, becoming the best version of a human being or a divine being that we could be, very focused on the process of enlightenment. And we'd gather weekly with this sort of focus. We'd heard some channeled material that had really spoken to our hearts and spoke about just this ability to manifest higher and higher levels of our divinity, purer aspects of our nature into the world and help transform this world into a paradise world. And it appealed to us. And then through these gatherings, we heard of another group in Byron Bay in Australia who had brought through a very particular ascension process that would again allow you to go on to deeper levels of experience of all the gifts the Divine One has. And one of the byproducts of that 21-day process was that the people involved were no longer needing to take physical food because they were magnetizing enough divine love, is what I see it now, to feed them in the way they needed. And so I investigated it. I'm very discerning. I guess. I don't believe everything I read or hear, and I like to do my own research. So I went along and had a look and met the people, and I felt that there were grains of truth of what was being shared that were important to me. And so my inner feeling, my intuition was to undergo this 21-day process. So I did. And the gift, one of the gifts it gave me out of many, many gifts, was this ability to live purely on prana and be sustained in this way. And it changed my life in a lot of ways. It was quite shocking. People got very angry, you know, very disbelieving, very offended even that a human being could claim that they no longer needed to take physical food, and yet at the same time they could see that whenever I was around them I wasn't needing to take anything except maybe a bit of water or an odd cup of tea. So it began a whole journey for me, and people in the community around me in the city I was, some people began to write articles about their experience because I was one of many, and publish them in magazines. And when I read the articles, I just had this inner feeling that the information they were sharing was incomplete, that people needed more information about what we'd been experiencing, because everyone's experience is different as well. And after a while I started to write articles in the magazine, and then eventually that all became the book, Living on Prana. I felt the guidelines for the 21-day process on their own could be dangerous and were incomplete, and I really wanted to offer more of a complete picture with it, which is why I wrote the book that then came into Germany and is now in 17 languages or whatever in the world. But I definitely wasn't the first, I was just one of a group.
What ability, did you have the possibility to channel before the 21-day process?
Well, when I was 16, 17, when I learnt to meditate, I had a very powerful experience of a strong inner voice warning me that I was in danger of losing my life, and that if I didn't change my situation immediately, I could die. And that was the first time I'd ever heard this strong inner voice. Before that, it was always intuition that led me through my life, like everyone. And when I listened to this intuition, my life was great. And when I ignored it, I'd have problems in my life, like everyone. So I think everybody is guided by this divine voice, this higher knowing, but I hadn't actually experienced channeling in the way that people think today, where you tune into inner plane, other realms or whatever, and open up to interdimensional telepathic communication. But I, understood from the process after that we all channel in many ways. I'd been channeling art all my life since I was a child, just painting pictures that would just come and end up on canvas and speak to people. Other people channel music. Other people channel aggression. Everybody channels something. So after this 21-day process, this initiation, it did improve my clairvoyant, my clairaudient, clairsentient abilities. Because if you're no longer using the energy for digestion in the physical system, and some people say it takes, 40 to 60 to 90%, different sources say different things, but they say this amount of energy in the digestive process, if you're not using it for that, what are you going to use it for? You can redirect this energy to awaken higher abilities, perhaps. So it's been an interesting journey of many, many gifts on those levels coming.
So any comments about that one? Kenny, I think when she talks about how we attract certain things to us, depending on how we're vibrating, she also talks about those cosmic particles, that chi and that building up in her cells, and that which actually help to support her in moving towards someone who can just live purely on prana. I also think it's important, she says we all do it. We're doing it, right? We just have been conditioned to think that we actually get our life force from food. So Kenny, any comments?
Yeah, I have, because I noticed that this is where it's getting interesting now, and we have to keep our minds clear, because she's using her part of her explanation or discussion of what's going on is the molecules and atoms that make up a human body, And she's also talking about energy fields that flow around that have to do with this body. So she's not really inventing or talking about any other woo-woo body. She's talking about good old-fashioned flesh and blood.
Well, she is, though. She does talk about we have all these other energy bodies. I don't know if this is in the first video or the second one, but she did mention that, right? We are multidimensional. We have all these bodies. But because we are so used to taking in food in the physical body, right? But I think as we're attracting these particles, or as you change your consciousness, that consciousness just isn't changing the physical body, it's changing our energy bodies around.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm at a disadvantage because I have strong views about consciousness and how it's not related to the physical body.
Yeah.
So I have to get used to that. And that is actually quite a big setback for me, to have her trying to link ordinary science to what she's talking about. Because I think I'm craving another explanation that doesn't involve the mundane science and biology of our human bodies.
But our human bodies, and I thought even science looked at that, is most of our human body, even though we think it's solid, ultimately it isn't. When I get into the one about the festival, you'll hear a young woman talk about what happened to her physical body when she was going through the process.
Yeah.
Okay, so keep that in mind, Kenny, and we'll go back to that. Okay, Kelly?
I was just gonna say that I think it was excellent. I think that and what I mean by that is that well, on every street corner in a bigger city, there's a restaurant or there's a coffee shop and stuff. So I think that's excellent that, you know, if you can kind of, you know, go a little higher in your consciousness and in your vibration frequency to be able to not go to them a lot, or, you know, not crave food, or not need it, or, you know, not have a hunger for it, then that's great.
Okay. Ashima, any comment?
Yes, few things. One is the last thing that she mentioned. Okay, first of all, I think it's really important to understand that it happens in the process of enlightenment. Like, just living on prana by itself, it doesn't do anything. It's definitely not gonna make us any. So if you think about it, let's just say we don't eat anything. That's not gonna help us. That's not gonna help us solving the puzzle of the universe.
That's right.
But I think it's in reverse, it's gonna happen, where if we really go on this journey and this like finding out, just like Kenny mentions, like I just like want to, I think there's like more to consciousness, just like then on this journey, then that can happen, then that's meaningful. And so I think it's very important to understand, because then people will be like really fascinated by what she said, and then maybe want to try that, but not understanding that, hey, this is meaningful when you think about it as a whole. Like for her also, she was like mentioning that this was like a journey, and then I had like that kind of meditation, and then just feeling that love, and then in the process that also came, and now that's meaningful. But if we just think about it solely on, hey, let's just live on prana, I don't think that's going to really solve any of the humanity's problem. Because for instance, like right now we are in Canada, it's a developed world, and right now we don't have a problem of like getting food, or like, let's just say, yes, we do spend a lot of our time and energy finding food and consuming it, but do we, like, when we're done with that, do we really think about the universe? Like, how many of us do think about universe and consciousness and all of this stuff that now we are here, like, talking about it, right? So I feel like, yeah, that's all I want to say. Is just like the whole thing, it's meaningful when you see it as a whole, not as just like that one living on a prana thing. That's at least one.
And she wasn't expecting it, right? It just
Yes,
kinda
no,
came,
I think
right?
that's what she
exactly.
meant also. But like,
Exactly,
I
yeah.
feel like it can get lost because now we're just sort of thinking about that.
Yeah, yeah. Also, you know, when I think of us in the West, and food has become an art form, right? Preparing food and all this sort of stuff, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And so when I first was mentioning this, I'd say about 2013 or 14, I was in a Zen group, and my Zen teacher, when I mentioned this, he just like got angry and said, well, I've heard about it, but I think it's ridiculous, right? He had a strong emotional reaction to it. And then Dave and I went to a ayahuasca session in BC, and there were 23 people there and all that. And one of the young fellows that was there actually was one of our neighbors, and we got in this discussion because it fascinated me. So I wanted to discuss with people. But because he prided himself on being such a good cook, he like again had a strong reaction to it, right? Because, you know, and so much of our life and our social circle involves food, right? So people have strong feelings towards it. I mentioned that. So,
No, yeah, 100%. And I think if you think about it, again, it works for some people and it doesn't work for other people. It doesn't mean that if you want to be spiritual, you have to live on prana.
That's right.
That's also very important to like understand, because yeah, you might be a cook. That's how you live a life, right? That's how you really enjoy doing.
Yeah.
Just do it, right?
Yeah, it's a pleasure in life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, some people, in fact, someone who I just met recently said that to me. She said, you know, Diane, I don't know if I'll join tonight, because she said to me, I think I came into this realm just to enjoy food. You know, so I thought, fair enough, right? Fair enough. So anyway.
I will say something.
Okay.
I find that, I find that with me, after a while, I have to not eat. Like because if I keep eating, I get sick.
Yeah.
So I have to, and I mean, I love cooking and I love food.
Yeah.
I'm not ashamed to say that. I think it's one of the pleasures that, you know, that we can all enjoy.
Yeah, and I think, you know, like Shima was saying too, you know, I mean, it's not living on prana, or just because you may live on prana does not mean that, well, you could be spiritual in certain ways, but your consciousness may not be that expansive as, say, someone who, you know, meditates but still consumes food or whatever. Like, I mean, you know, it varies on the person.
Yeah.
I'm probably not explaining it well, but I think, you know, it's an individual thing. Right?
Yeah, like I find that with me, like I say, if I eat too much, I get sick. So I know, I know that when my body's like, okay, stop, and I do, right? So
yeah. Okay, so Cal, I do want to move on because we still have quite a bit. The next one is just a 2-minute video by Michael Werner, who is a scientist, right? And his book, Life from Light, and he just talks a bit about, you know, how he got into this.
I was kept under 24-hour video observation. It was a 10-day experiment, and they collected a lot of data every single day. And I, too, was very interested in the absolutely conventional, solid, rigorous, and unbiased approach to this issue, because I needed to address the questions generated by this phenomenon. My name is Michael Werner. I underwent the 21-day breatharian process in January of 2001 and I have not gone back to eating since.
Habe ich nichts mehr gegessen. Naja, ich bin Naturwissenschaftler und da muss man sich.
I'm a scientist, and I ask myself, how is this possible? What do I say to colleagues or in scientific circles? Am I making a fool of myself? I want people to take me seriously. This all originated as a New Age thing, which I don't always understand nor always agree with. A stubborn materialist might well say, count me out, but I can't change the way it is.
Ich kann's nicht ändern, das ist so. Ja, der Kontakt war überraschend und abrupt.
My first encounter was completely unexpected. 6 years ago, my son was being married and an old family friend was staying with us. She wasn't eating, and we asked her if there's anything wrong. Nothing. She claimed to have simply converted to pranic feeding. Well, that blew my mind. Stirred me up emotionally, got me thinking, and then she told me about a book by Jasmuheen. I read it, but I wasn't fascinated, to say the least. But half a year later, I decided to put it to the test, and I undertook the ordeal of the 21-day process myself. And I have lived this way ever since.
So wie das in dem Buch steht, klang das
I was highly skeptical about the way the book put it, and I never experienced any heavenly brotherhoods working in me, at least not directly. But on the third night, I must also admit that I did indeed experience an undeniable change. When I awoke on day 4, I knew unequivocally that I was no longer fasting. It was evident. It simply was. It was as if I had eaten a full meal and I required no more.
Okay, any comments before we continue?
I can hardly wait till we get to the punchline.
I know, I was waiting for it to say something.
Yeah, I just found a short one, but there's a longer, I think that was like almost like a or a longer interview. But yeah, you'll find other videos of his online because there's so much to cover. I just thought I'd at least show you his work. And also when we get into the festival, there's a couple of scientists that talk too.
Do you think this has anything to do with this, with the saying, the starving artist?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe they weren't starving in the way we thought. I don't know. That's hard to say. Okay, Lion, did you have any comments?
I have a comment, of course, but the point is I have a problem with the religion and this stuff. First of all, what is the purpose of that?
Yeah.
The second one, I think the human coming to this world to enjoy. And the most important enjoyment is food, drink, breathing, sex, you know, these basic things. If you are going to stop these things, you're just suffering. And what is the reason behind the suffering? If think about that, you don't eat, you don't drink, you just sitting and watching the wall for hours and hours, and you say to yourself, I am medication or whatever. And I have a problem with this idea. It's like human become a kind of the lazy, you know, no activity. Human needs to grow, human needs to enjoy, you know. If we just suffering and suffering from everything and thinking about this is kind of the, I don't know what call, whatever you calling, pray or whatever, it is kind of the suffering. And I don't understand really what is the purpose of that.
First of all, can I just ask, Lion, why do you think they're suffering?
Because when you are, you know, food, drink, these things, enjoyment, why you are stopping that?
Yeah, and they are not, they can still participate in social things and consume food. It's just their consciousness is at such a level, they understand that they don't need to consume the food. They can still consume it. So again, when we get in the festival, a woman talks about that, right? She says, I have one foot here and one foot there, right? She, attend family gatherings and, eat with them and all that sort of stuff. It's just, she doesn't spend her personal time doing that. And what a lot of these people do is they use their energy differently. Like one thing Michael Werner would do is he plays tennis, he does other activities and that, very physical things as well.
I know, but when we go into the world, make money, spend for what? For food, for these basic human needs. If you're thinking these basic is we don't need, it means you're little by little become a lazy. You say, okay, where I have to go? Because if I open the fridge, no food on the table is okay.
Yeah. But these people find other ways of spending their time. Like Jasmuheen in her lifetime, I mean, she has the Embassy of Peace. She's written 50 books. Like these people she travels all over the world and helps those living in poverty. I mean, she does a lot. She has numerous courses online as well. And she's not the only one. A lot of people do that.
But the traveling, one of the part of the traveling is food. If you traveling just viewing, you can sit at the home and watch the video.
Yes, but what she travels to is she's participating in conferences and she's going to festivals, so she looks at it as a service to humanity, right? Because, we live lifestyles here that, a lot of people do not live. They have to, work very hard to, get enough, money and food to feed their families, right? I mean, so in this case, I think, what we need to think about is if we didn't have to spend so many hours, buying food, preparing food and all this, how would we use our time? And I would add to that things like television. Like when I talk to my family, they go like, how can you spend, have all that time to, do gardening and you do painting and you do this and you do that? I said, I don't watch television. I gave up television in 2012.
Social media.
Yeah. And I only do, I'm on LinkedIn and I probably go on like once a month. Right? Post
No,
something.
it's good if you use positively. Positively, it's all good, but then you can also use it like very negatively or just compulsory, just like 24/7 because you can do that. A lot of people, especially younger generation, that's how that's what they do with their time, really, like all the time. And a lot of other things too. So it's just not like food or consuming food. It can be all the other thing, gossiping, complaining about your life. It's all like adding that bad negative energy in you, adding like to that negative energy to your life.
Yeah, so I think, if there's anything we need to rethink, Lion, I'm just, putting this out there, is, how we spend our time, So anyway, but, stay with us, Lion, and stay with us, Kenny, on this. Kenny?
Quick one. When you're thinking along those lines of just every once in a while interject the word addiction.
Yeah.
See how that shapes you.
Yeah, that's true.
Well,
there's someone I know who has addiction problems to alcohol and drugs and all this, but his mother is addicted to television. He even told me that his mother, all his life, he remembers her saying the television was her friend, right? And I mean, there's different types of addiction.
Food's a big one.
Yeah, food is a big one.
Yeah.
I think food and television are the biggest drugs going right now.
Yeah.
And I think like I had a friend years ago who used to, you know, do physical activities all day. Like that was her, you know, work, and then would come home and would say, the television is my escape.
Yeah, yeah.
But
And that's fine
um,
once in a while, but sometimes it's over the top, right?
Yeah,
People
it
lose
was
too much time.
every day.
when you say that TV and food is addiction, just I want to say that think about the people in the, for example, some country, they have a famine, no electricity, no TV, no food. What does it mean the life for them?
What do you think it was the life for people who before there was any there was electricity, right? Or
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Lion, people, you know, I remember, what was his name? Mark Boyle, the moneyless man or something
It
like
was
that.
very boring life. Think about
It
now.
wasn't though, Lion. People would
I
get up
would-
and sing, they participate more. Now what people do is they're spectators. They sit back and they watch something, right? In the past, people participated more in things.
And if you think about it, people are not happier than people than before, which we should be, because there's just so much like really facility that we have that before they didn't have it. Like it's like everything's so easy for us. But then if you think about it, people are just more mentally, like we deal with mental illnesses like we never dealt with it before, depressions and all that stuff, where if you think about it, you're like, why do we have to deal with these problems where we've come so far, right? Shouldn't all this stuff solve our problem? But
Yeah.
the answer is it didn't. It's not that it's bad or it's good. I want to add actually one thing, that it all has to do with the perspective or with the way we see things. Eating and not eating both ways, because that's the whole idea of fasting, like addiction. That's the whole idea of fasting. That's why like it's been recommended, I think, in every religion, in every school of thoughts, that you have to fast, or it's good to fast at least.
Yeah.
Because what happens is like we have habits, but when we are fasting, it's just like we kind of stopping those habits, and then like after certain time, it's just like we press reset and then we start again. But then on the other side, there are people who totally see this differently, that you have to fast because of so and so, and I don't think that they get anything from this. Like in my country, it's like a sort of obligation that you have to fast, and people just think that they are better because they fast. And that's also very like a wrong way to look at it. So it's, I think all of this, whether you're pro or con, it's just the way that you look at life and things in life. Because if it works for you, do it. If it doesn't work for you, at the end of the day, don't do it, right?
Yeah, it's an individual thing.
But Shima, I want to say you, but after, for example, you using the phone, you using the computer, TV, electricity, fridge, road, cars, a microwave, blah, blah, blah. And suddenly they take off these from you, and they said that, okay, if you think about that, people 100 years ago was very happier than people now. But you using and you are changing your lifestyle is different from the people who lived 100 years ago. You cannot go back, and they said, oh, because you already passing this, process. Now you cannot go and living 100 years ago without electricity, without, modern things, and you said, oh, okay, I'm happy. You are going to more suffering if you are, stopping this stuff from yourself.
Okay, two things. You're right, we cannot go back, and there's like no way that we can go back, get to just it's not, we're going forward. But it's not suffering if you're actually like these people, they were not suffering, they weren't like, they were happy to me.
Because
and I was questioning
never
them.
use, they never see that. If they see, if they feeling, for example, people living, for example, in the poor country, they don't have a car. But if they see that people have a car, they have a dream to have a car.
No. For example, this last video that we watched, I don't remember the doctor's name, but what he was saying that this is sort of happened, this was his choice, and he didn't say that he suffered throughout his whatever the process was, and then after that 21 day he chose that he wanted that lifestyle. And that lifestyle, I just want to make clear, it's not for me. I'm probably not going to choose that, but he chose it and he was happy. So again, we go back to how do we see it? It might have worked for him, not for you, and that's totally okay. And I don't think that's what we are really discussed. Like, it's not like what we are in a disagreement here, right?
Yeah, and can I, Lion, because I'm thinking of the country you're from and also where Shima's from. And I also lived in Kuwait and Egypt for a total of 10 years between both countries. These are cultures where food is really important as a social part of the culture, right? I mean, it is, yes, here in Canada to some degree, but when I think of those older cultures, it very much is the case. I can see why, you do get a feeling that perhaps they're suffering, but these are, people who as individuals have, made this as a lifestyle choice, and they're finding other ways to spend their time.
Can I actually add one more thing? I just want to say what we said in the beginning, that expanding consciousness has nothing to do depriving yourself of bodily pleasure. You can please yourself as much as you want, and as a human we can do that because we have this physical body. But then the main thing is, I think that's why also you are here, because we all see the title expanding consciousness and we are more curious. And so the whole thing is, okay, so now that you're pleased with, you're full of these pleasures, so now what you want to do with your life, now that you've eaten, you've had all sorts of all those other pleasures, so now what you want to do with your life? And I think that's the main question I want to answer. So I think anything else is just sort of for us, is just observing other people's lives and what they've gone through. It just I think they are sharing with us, hey, that's what we found, and this is also possible, and this also might expand my consciousness, or in a way that, oh, okay, so this is possible too. Because then if you are not so set in, no, there is only one way to life, but there are different ways to life. It might not be my way, but there are other peoples who live differently and they are happy the way they do. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Dave, do you have a comment?
No, I agree totally with Shima. There's all kinds of ways to, live your life, and if taking in all kinds of pleasure is that's great. And if it's a positive thing, you're not, I don't want to have any judgment about that, but there's nothing wrong with that. There's, it can be very joyous and happy, make somebody very happy, but that's somebody's path. And other people got into, meditation and learning different ways. And this pranic nourishment is just a byproduct of that for some people, and great for them. They've found it improved their life, and great. I'm happy for them.
I want to add something. I think the life is meaningless. We just make ourselves target for the life. We don't know why we are here, and we just continue this life. If you receive these ones, the whole important things for the human to make target for themselves. But the life generally is meaningless.
I don't understand. I don't understand what you meant by that.
So, Lion, can I just ask, you don't think we come here for a particular purpose, and the purpose could vary from person to
We are
person?
coming by accident. Maybe I have a maybe different, I don't know what happening, maybe, you know, this is no purpose for coming to here for me and for anybody. This is by accident.
Oh.
And this is not.
I actually do, a lot of people do think that, so I'm not really surprised because I heard that before. But can I ask you, because we all immigrated to this country, why did you immigrated here?
Because this is like a sheep. One is the jumping, other one is jumping. I think I didn't like I didn't know. Maybe I jumping in the valley or somewhere in the ocean. I just follow the people. I don't know any purpose. I thought become a happy and better life, but it's the same shit.
For example, when you go inside and I don't know, a house, what do you think of that house? Do you think that house is built just by accident, or do you think that house has an engineer, has a plan, has somebody who thought about building that house, and who somebody had thought about?
I know it's going back to the religion. I think this is by accident.
No, I'm talking about the house. When you see a house,
the house. I know.
You think there's an engineer to a house. When you see a house, you think, oh, it's an accident.
Of course, the engineer, but you are going.
But there was a plan.
Sorry,
so do you think there was a plan to that house?
Now we're getting
thought about it.
Off topic.
I just want to say.
Yeah, no, I can see both views here, because like Shima was saying too, there are people that think very much what Lion's saying as well. So I just wanted to ask our Zoom user, you're muted right now, but is there anything you'd like to comment on before we continue? Okay.
Zoom user has added some comments in the
Oh,
chat.
is that right? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
My name is Sarah. You guys can call me Sarah.
Oh, hi, Sarah. Yes, we were communicating. Okay.
Yeah. No, this is a great conversation. To start where Lion just left off is, I think that kind of the whole point of just life in general is just like evolution. And what's more evolutionary than like humans evolving from needing food? For me personally, it's been a long journey for me. So I kind of was just introduced to this idea of like, I call it like breatharianism is what I was first heard of it as. And basically I just was meditating a lot and, doing yoga and stuff like that. And my body literally just called to me to just stop eating food. Like I would eat and it didn't feel good. It filled my body up and it just didn't feel right. And so I was just stopped eating. And so I did. And it was really hard because of the people that, I was around. They didn't understand it. They didn't, see it as possible. They're all like, you need food to live, you need your nutrients, you need all of that. And they just didn't understand. And so I think that kind of got to me a lot. And, I started to kind of disbelieve in myself, like, oh, like, there's, 7 billion people on the world or whatever it is. I don't know. But, and they're all living on food, like it's not normal to not need food. And so I kind of, got down on myself. And I also had that, point that Lion was making about how, food is like the greatest pleasure on earth, right? And like we come here to, be sensuous and experience these things. And so I was like, yeah, so like, why am I like depriving myself of, you know, the greatest pleasures that are here. And I think a lot of it is that it's really about, you know, if you just stop eating and you don't do anything else, then it is just starvation. You know, it's not living on prana, it's starvation. But, you know, if you continue to like do the practices, and, you know, I think a huge thing is just like meditation and like changing your belief system around it, and just like really just like believing that you're just like taking that energy in, and just like seeing everything as just like light all around you. I think that's really what makes it possible. You know, it is a belief. The world is based on our beliefs, and it's based on our, you know, collective beliefs as well, which is why, you know, it is really hard to be on this path. But yeah, so I kind of stopped for a while, and I was like, okay, well, like, you know, food is great, like food is good for my body, food is nourishing, you know. So I actually developed this like binge eating disorder after that, where I just like went after it, and like, you know, was just obsessed with food. It was an addiction, you know. Food is an addiction. And it was me going against my intuition as well, because, you know, I'd eat and eat until I was full and it didn't feel good, but I was just addicted to it, literally. And I'm kind of paying for that now a little bit, health-wise. I have some things going on, but I'm trying to go back to living a, you know, breatharian lifestyle, because that's literally just what my body calls me to do. And, you know, there's one morning I was waking up from sleep, and I heard, because that's when I kind of get messages, and I heard, you know, my guide, source, the universe say, they said, how can I fill you up when you're already full? And so it's literally just that. It's like having to give up these like sensuous pleasures, like giving up certain things in search for like a higher fulfillment, is really just what I see it as. So yeah, I think, yeah, go ahead.
Continue.
No, that's all I really had to say. Yeah.
And when you went through the first stage in that, it was a natural process for you. You just felt that your body didn't need food anymore, right?
Yeah.
But you felt society's pressure that you had to fit in and do certain things, right? And that is the problem with it, right? Because you automatically want to say, oh, you know, you have this condition, that condition, right? The label on. Sarah? Oh, you're frozen on us.
Right. Yeah. That's the hardest part, is just like being so kind of impeded by it. Like we were saying earlier, is how you know, food is such a big part of society, and it's, you know, it's, and you know, it's not a bad thing at all, but I think the things just are evolving, and I think that in the future, and like future generations, breatharianism is going to be a lot more common. And I think, you know, I don't know how long it'll take, but I think eventually, you know, humans will be living as a species without food. And I think especially the way too that we're evolving with climate change, and like with, you know, everything that's going on, all the issues that we have with our food systems, I think it's gonna have to become more of a reality, whether we like it or not. And I think a lot of people are gonna have to get used to it, and, you know, without food, you know, maybe like increments at a time. I think people are gonna have to start really, you know, trying to, I think we think that we need a lot more than we do, first of all. Yeah, I was just saying about how like with like climate change and like everything that's going on in the world, like I think a lot of our food sources are going to be depleted. And I mean, it's hard because there are people in other countries, you know, that are living that way, that don't have access to food. And because they see it as suffering, they're not able to access that prana is kind of what I'm thinking. But it really is just like that, you know, your beliefs are your reality. So, but yeah, I was saying that I think in the future, humans are gonna be a lot more open to the idea of living on prana.
All right. Thank you for that, by the way.
Yeah, just a little firsthand experience, I guess.
Yes.
Because it has
I was
been.
actually trying to seek someone else like you, so I'm glad that you shared that.